Sandy Hook, what we know now that we didn't know then. I presented here on Sandy Hook in my law case. About 1/3 of what I'll present is familiar territory, but the other 2/3 not, including carrying my case to the United States Supreme Court, which they declined to review. But most importantly, information I learned from being contacted by participants in the Sandy Hook event who wanted to lend their moral support because they liked my book and they felt I'd been abused by the judicial system. They're still getting a lot of mileage out of Sandy Hook. We're regularly reminded photographs of those who are supposed to have died there. I'm going to explain how we know 3 of them I'm going to prove for you here are alive and well. Emily Parker, Noah Posner, 2 of the kids, the most photogenic, and Victoria Soto, who as a teacher is purported to have given her life to save the kids. Here we have Sandy Hook School. Many never pay attention to the fact the word elementary school is not there, and I have learned that's because it was not an elementary school. Y'all recall when Wayne Carver, the medical examiner, gave his incoherent presentation and how many of the state police for Connecticut were smirking in the background. There'll be more to understand what was going on there. Here's the governor and lieutenant governor explain how he and she had been spoken to that something like this might happen, leading me to ponder, spoken to by whom? Something like this, what could he possibly mean? There are only really 2 alternatives: that he'd been advised someone might go berserk and come into a school in Connecticut and shoot it up, in which case he had an obligation to give a warning to the school systems to take additional security measures, which he did not do, or that he'd been informed they were going to take an abandoned school, conduct a drill, present it as mass murder to promote gun control, which is exactly what happened. And when I wondered by whom, turned out no less than U.S. Attorney Eric Holder visited with him on the 27th of November, about 2 weeks before the event, discussing the Obama administration's gun control initiative. Here, talking about Project Longevity, but in fact, I believe informing the governor of what was going to transpire. And here we have Eric Holder, longtime anti-gun guy. This is in 1995 at a Democratic Women's National Convention in Washington, where he explained that we have to change people's attitude toward guns. We must brainwash them. That is his language. Where Sandy Hook, I submit, was the first of a series of staged school shootings and other events intended to brainwash the American people. Almost everyone is familiar with this photograph, which appeared on the cover of virtually every newspaper in the world at the time. Apparently, a policewoman escorting Sandy Hook kids to safety. But did you know there was a second photograph taken by the same photographer? She's acknowledged taking both, where you can see parents standing around, hands in their pocket, casually looking on, no anxiety, no concern. Here you see what happened. They actually rearranged the kid to get a better shot. The lower is the photograph taken earlier, where there was a little girl in a pink sweater and a short skirt. They replaced her with a little boy, number 1, in the long sleeve sweater and blue jeans. It is more telegenic, I agree. But look there in the bottom between boy number 1 and boy number 2. We have parents simply casually looking on, not an iota of concern, leading me to describe this as lounging at the massacre. Lots of anomalies. We even have this FEMA manual for the event. beginning at 8 a.m. on the 13th, ending at 11:15. That was the rehearsal, then presented as a live event on the 14th. The Department of Education even confirmed that it was a drill, that no kids were harmed, and it was done for gun control. Lots of signs that it was a FEMA drill. A sign everyone must check in with a controller. They get paid for participation. Porta potties already in place. Pizza and bottled water available at the firehouse. Standard for FEMA drills. They provide refreshments and restrooms. Name tags on lanyards. Parents bringing children to the scene. Think about it. Here's from the FEMA manual, which I included in my book, Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, which I published in 2015, and Amazon.com banned less than a month later, even though it had sold nearly 500 copies. Paul Preston, who himself is a school administrator and conducted live shooting drills, reached out to his contacts in the Obama Department of Education, all of whom confirmed to him that it had been a drill, that no children had been harmed, and it had been done to promote gun control. Here are some of the signs, thus, proof that it wasn't a school massacre, but a FEMA drill. Right before our eyes, a sign. Everyone must check in. Boxes of bottled water and pizza at the firehouse. Porta potties present from scratch. Many wearing name tags on lanyards. Parents bringing children to the scene. Also, proof that it wasn't a massacre. No surge of EMTs into the building. No medevac helicopters were called. No string of ambulances to rush little bodies off to hospitals where they could be declared dead or alive. No evacuation of what were said to have been 469 other students. No bodies placed on the triage tarps, dead or wounded. Here you see the sign, everyone must check in. Here you see porta potties already in place. Here you see bottled water at the firehouse. Here you see name tags on lanyards. Perfectly standard for FEMA drills. They have color-coded name tags to identify your position, your role in the event as it's being orchestrated. Parents bringing children to the scene. Can you imagine a parent bringing a child to the scene of a child shooting massacre? It's absurd. But this was a rehearsal. They were treating it as a festive occasion. I was sued over the book for a claim that a death certificate for one Noah Posner was not authentic. The death certificate had no file number, had no town or state certification, and under Connecticut law, not even parents are allowed to have uncertified death certificates. Even though I introduced the reports of two, not one, but two forensic document experts, that I was correct, the court nevertheless set all my evidence aside as unhelpful, where it turns out in Wisconsin it has a peculiar situation where a judge can set aside evidence that he finds to be unreasonable. I was found in defamation, and because I also sought to expose the party who came and testified under the name of Leonard Posner was not, in fact, Leonard Posner, I was hit with a contempt for, in addition to the $450,000 for the alleged defamation, another $650 for contempt of court. I was denied my Seventh Amendment right to a trial by jury. In fact, none of the Sandy Hook cases have gone to a trial by jury. They've all been decided on procedural grounds, or in my case, by simply setting aside all the evidence. And the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal justice under law, had I been in another state, such as Texas, either it would have been thrown out or it would have gone to a jury, and I would have had that opportunity. And this is, of course, why I carried it to the Supreme Court. Alex Jones has recently been readmitted to Twitter. He went on a group conversation with Elon Musk and others about Sandy Hook to clear the air. He fell in line saying that was a real school shooting. This was very troubling. He talks about professors, me and school safety expert Wolfgang Halbig having misled him if he had only read the book. Now hear Elon talking with Alex.
I don't know how much. Would you like the short answer or the medium answer or the long answer?
I think at least the medium answer. Look, I guess people just want to know, like, obviously it would be like heartless and cruel to deny a school shooting of children, or to attack the parents or anyone who is involved. It seems that would be, just incredibly mean and cruel, frankly. So it's sort of that's I think what a lot of people are upset about, or at least they think that is the reason to be upset about. And if that were true, I think we would rightly be upset with you.
Yeah, yes, sir. Well, please let me then just tell you what really happened, okay? And if you want me to send you a dossier, videos and articles.
I mean, post it to your account,
Yes, sir, I will do that. So let me tell you what happened.
Well, wait until
I'm a guy that didn't go to college. I mean, a few years of community college. I started out on Access TV 29 years ago. I was not professionally trained, and by 2016, I had 30 million viewers and listeners a day conservatively. I was the biggest show, as big as Rogan is now or bigger. And I had a very small operation and did not even understand how powerful I was. And so when that event, I just call it the school shooting, which I do believe happened 11 years ago, the internet exploded, and it was the top story for off and on for years with all these professors and former school safety people and all of them saying they believed it was a drill. And I simply covered them covering that. What was entered in court against me in both cases where I was found guilty by judges, kind of like in New York, there's a judge in Trump's case, not even a jury, in his real estate case. And then years later, after Trump got elected and after I was deplatformed, it made me bigger. And so suddenly I would wake up and there would be sometimes 100 articles or more a day, every major news channel saying that I was currently saying nobody died, currently sending people to their houses, currently peeing on graves. I didn't even know these people's names. I only said one of their names ever. Now, I don't know.
Let me say, by the way, what if Alex had read the book? During the deposition, he said he hadn't read it. What sense does that make? To have never read the only objective study with 13 experts, including 6 PhDs, who concluded the school was closed and there were no students there. We didn't merely assert that it had been a FEMA drill. We proved it, including the manual. I know of only one review of the book that appeared, Brian Bright, an important book Amazon refused to publish. This story, writes Ryan, came my way by way of Mike Adams in his report that Amazon was getting into the book banning business with this particular title, which to me proved that whatever the book point, it was worth looking into. The authors made it easy by publishing the book in PDF format and making it freely available in many other locations. Editor's note, mine, which the Posner versus Fetzer lawsuit was designed to staunch, and which, under court order, I am not presently able to provide. So, Brian continues, I have read the book and digested its essentials. As a professional editor, I find nobody's copy editing and formatting less than stellar, but the book is well organized and the content bona fide. It touches all the bases and answers the hard questions. To an epistemological certainty, Sandy Hook was not real. Nobody real died. Sandy Hook was a FEMA drill with the purpose of generating support for an extreme gun control and federal power agenda. This review will simply catalog the main factual data that demonstrates the certainty. 489 students minus 20 equals 469 plus 70 staff and teachers. Nowhere to be found. No evacuation. The benefits to those who participated in the Sandy Hook hoax have been substantial. The donation sites created by families of the victims have hauled in over 27 million, or in excess of $1 million per family. Was Sandy Hook Elementary School operational on December 14, 2012, or had it long been abandoned? In an interview with Wolfgang Halbig on Truth Radio on March 21st, 2014, InfoWars reporter Dan Bondoni said at the 5:45 mark, the school's been closed down for God knows how long. Neighbors can't understand why there were kids in the building because it was condemned. Reports of Sandy Hook Elementary being contaminated with asbestos requiring expensive repairs. Photographic evidence of an abandoned school. Absence of handicapped parking spaces and signage. Absence of internet activity 2008 to 2012. Wolfgang Halbig's Freedom of Information hearing. Among our most important discoveries has been the FEMA manual for the Sandy Hook event, Appendix A, which specifies that a rehearsal will be conducted on December 13, 2012, with the event going live on the 14th. These photographs, day after the shooting, provide further substantiation of my inference that the school had been closed by 2008, which I published with Amanda in Sandy Hook Elementary School, closed in 2008, a stage in 2012. The building is covered with moss and grime, with many indications of repairs left undone. Exhibit 1, absence of compliance with Americans with Disabilities Act. Exhibit 2, presence of electrical hazards for teachers, staff, and students alike. Exhibit 3, absence of wheelchair accessibility and proper maintenance. Exhibit 4, presence of stored items of every shape, kind, and description. Even included was a consolidated crime report from the FBI for 2012, where under murder and non-negligent manslaughter for Newtown appears the numeral 0, where Sandy Hook is a subdivision of Newtown, and had there been the murders in Sandy Hook, that number should have been 26 or 27 if you include Adam Lanza, who is alleged to have committed suicide, since suicides are classified as murder of a person by themselves. Meanwhile, I want to proceed to show you how 3 of the key players here, 2 victims, Emily Parker and Noah Posner, and 1 teacher, Victoria Soto, were actually alive and well, did not die. Here's a classic photograph. The guy is supposed to be Leonard Posner with Noah. This is not the person who came to my oral hearing and whom I sought to expose and wound up being saddled with an additional $650,000 fine. One of my colleagues, Kelly Watt, noticed that Adam bore a striking resemblance to his older half-brother, Michael Vabner. We went about taking a look. They had similar eyes, similar nose, similar ears. Larry Rivera, a colleague of mine who has done brilliant research proving the figure known as Doorman, standing in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository, was in fact Lee Oswald, as Harold Weisberg, Jim Garrison, and other serious students of JFK have believed. So I was sure he could help resolve the issue by superposition. So I sent him the photographs of Noah and of Michael Vabner for him to superimpose, and here was the result. You see Noah Posner turn into Michael Vabner, or Michael Vabner turn into Noah Posner, because Noah Posner was a fiction made out of photographs of Michael Vabner when he was a child. Here are the parts of the GIF you've just seen. Michael Vabner, let me assure you, is alive and well. He's performing stand-up comedy in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the Comedy Studio, along with Emma Marfosine, Kathy Lynch, and more. Steve Lucia reaches out to me, initiating the most fascinating intellectual adventure of my life. We spoke almost daily for 6 months since the 26th of December, 2021. Hard to believe. 2 years ago. We are still in contact. Steve and 2 others were upset with the abuse to which I'd been subjected in the courts. They'd all read my book. Indeed, it appears the entire Sandy Hook participant community read the book and liked the book because they believe in truth. Emily Parker, it turns out, was involuntarily played by Margaret Alice Cottle. Victoria Soto was played by Victoria Aurelio, the daughter of Debbie, who happens to be the new town clerk. Here's Steve, called at 5:53 p.m. Sunday, 26 December. He had subsequent calls, very interesting stuff to share with me. This man knows more about what happened in Sandy Hook, the players, the details, than anyone on planet Earth. He is the single most knowledgeable. They explained to me that Eric Holder had come to Newtown, not in 2008, but in 2006, that the school was actually known as Sandy Hook School. It wasn't even an elementary school, that it was a special needs school. And that explains why the parking lot is so limited. If you had 289 students there, as the final report on Sandy Hook claimed by Stephen Sadinsky, a state's attorney in Connecticut, you need a U-shaped driveway so one bus after another can pull on, unload, and pull out without creating a traffic jam. Can you imagine trying to bring in as many buses as it would require into this very narrow, confined space? There's only a single exit. And while I may mention it by and large later, there's several tells here, including, look at the central row of cars. Everyone is parked facing the school. Well, if you come in following the driving instructions, you'd curl around and you'd park facing away. But it appears that since they were bringing in a long string of automobiles, it was simpler to bring them in a single line and put them in 2 by 2 by 2, all facing the building. Who would even know? After all, they were only props. Notice, too, there's no handicap parking. I mentioned that already. I verified with the United States Americans with Disabilities Act and Connecticut law at this point in time. In order for this to be a legally operating school, you would have had to have the familiar blue and white signage, the blue and white parking spaces. None of them are present. In addition, there's no smoke or steam rising from the building. This was a 38-degree Fahrenheit day, above freezing, but too cold to conduct classes without heating the building. But no doubt, because the boilers were dysfunctional from having been out of use, they were unable to do that. They explained Eric came down and made a proposition to Newtown, offering them $114 million to participate in this event, which was going to instruct the American people as to what could happen if we don't take guns away from the American people. Residents of the community who didn't want to be a part of it moved out. Others, however, participated. They had auditions for roles. They signed non-disclosure agreements. They received fringe benefits. Participants in the Sandy Hook event don't pay taxes. They get free college tuition. Much was going on here. Well, here's a photograph. We have Emily on the right, actually Margaret Alice Cottle, portrayed with her parents, Robbie and Alyssa, except they're not her parents. And those girls are not her sisters. They are actually her cousins. He is her uncle. Here she was there. She was actually at the event. Notice wearing this little pink top there. Here's a Parker and a Cottle in Utah, I believe. In any case, this is another photograph supposed to be of Emily with her sisters. But in fact, she has conveyed through Steve that both of these photographs were actually photoshopped. Here she is today. Margaret Alice Cottle. She's super smart. I could extol her intellectual virtues at great length. Super smart, just a terrific person. And she and Victoria both have been glad to be outed because they want to get Sandy Hook off their back and resume their normal life. Victoria Soto, played by Victoria Aurelio, was supposed to be a teacher who gave her life for her students. She also, however, participated in the Uvalde event, which was modeled after Sandy Hook. You'll recall Sandy Hook. Adam Lanza is supposed to have shot his mother and then gone to the school and shot 20 kids and 6 adults. Well, in Uvalde, the shooter shot his grandmother and then went to the school and shot 19 second, third, and fourth graders. Give me a break. Meanwhile, as Jay Rowlands wrote, you mentioned Victoria Soto, that's her on the right, resurrected as Eva Morales in time to be shot at Uvalde Gym. Did you know our favorite Muslim, Dr. Oz, had a kid on his TV show who supposedly survived Sandy Hook? The Turkish doctor asked this kid a few leading softball questions like, are you proud of your teacher? The kid shrugs his shoulders and says, yes. After this continues, the child gets frustrated and annoys and says it was a drill. What? Dr. Oz does nothing with this bomb this kid dropped? Can anyone see the ridiculousness? So here we have Eva Morales, Texas teacher, victim on the left, and Sandy Hook teacher, victim on the right. Nothing to see here. Victoria has earned degrees in education. Here's that one graduation ceremony, and additional in the New York School of Career and Applied Studies. You notice the date, September 15th, 2017. Notice that's 5 years after the event at Sandy Hook in 2012. Soto, she's even using the name Victoria Soto. Her associate degree in liberal arts from Kingsborough Community College, works as a certified teacher's assistant in the Block Institute in Manhattan. She's a super person too. Here we have a little bonus, doing research on Uvalde. Remember, Wayne Carver, the medical examiner, well, he's supposed to have died. Check this out.
But the healing will take place. It's just going to take a while.
But the healing will take place. It's just gonna take a while.
Well, I'm convinced that, in fact, Wayne Carver's alive and well and was in Uvalde along with Vicky Aurelio, playing the role now of Eva Morales. I was actually on the phone with Steve when Margaret was beside him talking to Vicky on a cell phone. And Margaret asked Vicky how much she was paid for her Valdi performance, and Vicky told her $210,000. That's where our American taxpayer money is going. Now, I recently did an SGT report about my interaction with them and have shared it with them, and they both liked it very much. You can find it online. SGT report, never speak of this. Meanwhile, Lenny, the guy calling himself Leonard Posner, sued me for defamation. My appeals went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Nobody Died at Sandy Hook, as I mentioned, was banned less than a month after it had gone on sale, so I released it for free as a PDF. Here, they were trying to find a way to staunch the flow because it's been downloaded millions of times. I've heard one estimate as high as 10 million. The book included a claim that a death certificate for Noah was not authentic. It was a death certificate with no file number, no state, no town certification. In other words, it was an incomplete, uncertified death certificate. And under Connecticut law, not even parents can have uncertified death certificates. But they, in the complaint, put a complete death certificate that had a file number, state and town certification, and alleged absurdly that they were not materially different. And in effect, the judge went right along with that, found me in defamation, even though I had introduced not just one, but two forensic document expert reports that I was correct. And at that point in time, 4 different versions of the death certificate had been introduced. The 2 forensic document expert concluded all 4 of them were fake. Nevertheless, I was found in defamation based on what was supposed to be a summary judgment, which can only be applied if there are no disputed facts. In other words, summary judgment was introduced so judges could perform the job of applying the law in cases where there are no facts for juries to decide. But in my case, the facts could not have been more opposite. I was declaring it was a FEMA drill where nobody died. He was declaring his son had died, for which he had a death certificate, for which I had 2 forensic document experts testify it was fake. But the judge nevertheless found me in defamation by setting all my evidence aside as unreasonable, which is permissible in Wisconsin, but in my opinion, completely absurd. The trial for damages found against me $450,000. And when I sought to establish that the party who had come and testified under oath as Leonard Posner was not, in fact, Leonard Posner, I was hit with a contempt of court for another $650,000. I was denied my 7th Amendment right to a trial by jury. I would have had a very fair hearing in Texas. It would have either gone to a jury or it would have been thrown out of court because of the absurd claim that a complete death certificate was the same as the one that I had published. In fact, I had never before seen or commented upon the death certificate that was attached to the complaint. State of the Nation even declared, this may be the single most important issue brought before the Supreme Court in our lifetime. But SCOTUS didn't have time for it. Whether we have the right to a trial by jury in each and every state, SCOTUS could not be bothered, read and weep. And let me say, it was an oddity that during the course of my appeals of the circuit court judgment, the Posner team argued that I didn't have the right to a trial by jury because it had never been declared to be a right for all 50 of the states, unlike the other 9 amendments in the Bill of Rights. All the other 9 have been declared to be applicable within each of the 50 states, but not the 7th. What happened here, therefore, was I teed up a major ruling that would have applied the 7th Amendment to all 50 states and, of course, corrected the abuse taking place in Wisconsin through a summary judgment procedure that is ridiculously unfair, so that every resident of Wisconsin is being denied their right to a trial by jury by this atrocious arrangement. And included in my evidence to the Supreme Court, when I appealed for a rehearing after their initial finding against me, included the FEMA manual itself, something that Margaret had discovered, namely in Connecticut. For Connecticut FEMA, they had right on their schedule, 12/14/2012, FEMA L366. That's a Sandy Hook Elementary School drill. She found it. She found the link. I verified it. I downloaded it myself. Also, they distribute a map how to get from Bridgeport, Connecticut, where FEMA headquarters is located, to Dickinson Drive, where Sandy Hook School, now renamed Sandy Hook Elementary School, was located. I also included an Appendix E. This was the sworn affidavit of a Texas licensed private investigator. He compared the state police report with photos in its own archives from which the metadata had been removed. Here's a photograph down the hallway. This is the floor area described as having Don Hawksprung, the school principal, and Mary Sherlock, the school psychologist, lying in pools of blood. While some evidence of red substance is present, in my opinion, it is not consistent with the statement, pools of blood. Here's other photos inside the classroom. Not only show no bodies or blood, but no student desks or chairs, no teachers' desks, no American flags. Not only proof it was not a mass murder, but proof it was not even an operational school. not even an operational school. And you'll notice, to whom I shared this particular tweet, Elon Musk, Jonathan Turley, John B. Wells, Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. I haven't heard a word from any of them about this. Not a word. More Sandy Hook anomalies. The crime scene investigative vehicle was on the scene before the staging of the event was complete. Brian Davidson, the private investigator who authored my Appendix E, is licensed in Texas. We did an interview. This is when we first made contact on investigative techniques that are available on the internet. I sent him a test photo because he said you could also use it to identify photographs. So I sent him a test photograph, no background or identification. He was able to apply his skills and identify that the photograph had been taken the evening of 14 December 2012 after the shooting allegedly had taken place. So here's Brian, the guy, when we did this initial interview about investigative tools for the internet. You can find it on my BitChute channel, Jim Fetzer. He applied techniques including shadow analysis to ascertain the exact time and location of the photograph having been taken. Here is the photograph. Now, it's really fascinating, and in and of itself, it establishes this was a scam. You'll notice the crime scene tape up because, of course, the crime has already been committed. This is Wayne Carver leaning against a wall with his arm folded, awaiting the arrival of his portable mortuary tent. Here is the crime scene vehicle, and notice just above this row of 4 windows. After the event, they would be shot out, but here they are intact, which proves that they had not yet completed staging the scene. Thus, compare. This is what you see in that photograph with a crime scene vehicle present. This is what they presented after the fact. Here you see some of the perps looking at the window frame, trying to figure out what they're going to do with it. They eventually drilled holes through the aluminum that were supposed to simulate shots fired from the outside and inserted these pink rods. But those are all perfectly parallel, 90 degrees to the window pane. No one familiar with marksmanship would be taken in. This is clearly manufactured to simulate shots that were not, in fact, real, that had never been taken. Promoting propaganda about gun violence. Barack Obama signed 23 executive orders on 16 January 2013 to constrain our access to weapons under the Second Amendment. That was a month and 2 days later. Media ignores the defensive use of guns, which saves 200,000 lives per year. In other words, Americans are using guns to defend themselves millions of times every year, saving an estimated 200,000 lives. Now, think about it. Gun violence in the United States brings about perhaps around 80,000 deaths per year, more than half of which are suicides. More than half of which are suicides. So even if you round it up to 50,000, we're talking about 6 times as many deaths, 200,000 versus 50 or more. I mean, give me a break. This is absurd. But you find in the media constantly they harp on the theme that more guns means more gun violence, when it turns out the opposite is the case. There were 19 democides. That's a slaughter of the citizens of a state by their own government. During the 20th century, they were preceded by gun confiscation. Gun violence across the nation is centered in areas that the Democrats control. So here's Obama signing those 23 executive orders to constrain our access to weapons on January the 16th, 2013. Here's a murder distribution rate where Dr. Ewan, one of my collaborators, superimposed a 2016 electoral map over a 2014 murder distribution map. It turns out murders are clustered in cities that Democrats control, because they have their free fire zones. They have constrictions on gun ownership that has the effect of creating opportunities for criminals to use their guns without hesitation or fear that they're going to be interfered with some civilian who happens to have a weapon of his own. Here's a report about Eric Swalwell making comments about taking guns away. After Joe Biggs tweeted that Mr. Swalwell wants a war over the Second Amendment, Mr. Swalwell responded, and it would be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes, too many of them, but they are legit. The congressman tweeted, I'm sure if we talked, we could find common ground to protect our families and communities. The Parkland, Florida school shooting was one more in a seemingly endless string of fabricated events that appear to be designed to instill fear into the public, to make it more amenable to manipulation, to promote a political agenda, which, as Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show has observed, has 3 stages. First, a massive assault on the First Amendment, covered by the use of private companies, namely the social media giants, Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, to remove critics of official accounts from publicizing and sharing their research. Thus have 6 of my books been banned. Second, a correlated attack on the Second Amendment, where the University of Hawaii's Democide Project has shown there were 19 genocides during the 20th century, each of which were preceded by gun confiscation, leaving the population helpless to resist. And third, the extraction of dissidents, the critics, those who speak out against fake news, propaganda, and censorship, who must be removed because they pose a threat to the deep state and can inspire others to stand up for their rights and be transferred to American gulags, which we know as FEMA camps. That the removal of guns from law-abiding citizens is not in the interest of the American people follows from studies that have shown that gun ownership and the homicide rates are inversely related, which means the greater the gun ownership, the lower the homicide rate, as multiple studies have shown. John Lott, The War on Guns 2016, makes a very good read about what's really going on. Thus, I have said, when they come for our guns, the time has come to use them, but some think by then it may already be too late.